by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Cosell, and Fiegley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining our show today. And I'd like your continued support. We have our superstar panel, Attorney Milton Grime and Attorney Vanita Banks on today. But we start off with a sad note. I've been observing what may be the worst fire catastrophic loss in American history. About 12 people have died. And for generations, we may have health hazard stemming from this California fire. But we have on-hand person, first-hand knowledge, Milton Grimes. What's going on? Who's going to be held liable for this catastrophic losses?
Well, Nathaniel, I'm not going to ignore your question. I wish I could point my finger, but I can't. I don't think they have caught any viable suspect, so to speak, of causing the fire. Right now, people are just anxious trying to put them out, relocate themselves. I know a number of people who have been burned out. Believe it or not, this is probably my first time knowing someone directly that has been affected by one of the fires out here. My granddaughter's coach, some of her co-players homes have been devastated, burned completely to the ground. People are putting together GoFundMe for a lot of these people. Insurance may not cover some of these losses, and many of these losses may not be covered for insurance. Some of the insurances were recently canceled 6 months or so ago. My understanding is that there was some suspicion that these fires were coming, and I don't know how you do that. Not to that degree, but that's what's happening. So I wish nobody was responsible for these fires. I honestly do. But there is a great suspicion that these fires were caused. It seems to have affected some pretty substantial neighborhoods. Altadena, though, you got a working class neighborhood that was burned down. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine lived there, and they're in a hotel now because their home was completely burned down. I was at a party there, an all-white party, white clothing party, about 3 years ago. They had a beautiful yard. They put a lot of money into it, building it up and making it very entertaining. It's just knowing some of these people and knowing how they live, people may not have the money to come back.
Hey, Attorney Bank, you were executive with Allstate Insurance Company. Do you think that the insurance company will have the capacity to handle this type loss of this magnitude?
Well, prior to this devastating fire, in fact, I understand there was a fire in 2018, Attorney Grimes, in California, that was at that time the biggest fire. This fire and this tragedy has far exceeded that many insurers pulled out of the homeowners market in California. And so I was reading an article entitled The Unfightable Fire, that this fire is so huge, a perfect storm between the drought conditions in California and hurricane-like winds. And I understand that California and Southern California have some of the most well-equipped firefighting forces in the world. And someone was quoted as saying that if these firefighters couldn't quickly get this fire contained, likely nobody could. And so the combination of extreme weather and climate forces caused this fire to, I understand, take out house by house by house, and at a clip of 5 um, football fields um, per minute that it's just devastating. Something that has never been seen in the history that has never been seen in this century. Let me say that. Um, will homeowners insurance cover these losses? Um, the answer is yes. That fire caused by windstorm is covered under homeowners policies. Um, the insurer of last resort, I understand, in California is called FAIR. But after this devastating loss, it's possible that the FAIR plan, which is funded by private insurance, will go bankrupt. We'll have to see.
Mm, mm.
Well, one notation, I just got a news flash from NBC News. This fire is such a catastrophic loss, they anticipate that homeowners insurance across the entire United States of America will likely increase next year. So this fire is so bad until every state fire insurance will go up. They're projecting, and that's how big this claim is going to be. The anticipated claim end up being several $trillion. So this is going to be maybe the largest insurance claim in American history by the time this thing gets done. This is incredible because most people don't realize I was looking at some of those fancy homes, Milton, Vanita, that are being burned down. And real estate prices in California is already astronomical.
Yes.
And you have a little small $2,000 home there costs $1 million. And I see some of those $9,000, $10,000 homes that are worth 10, 20, $30 million. When you take those type claims and you add in the loss of use, additional living expenses, personal items inside your home. So a $20 million home may be a $40 million claim. And so when those claims start adding up, insurance company could not have projected this type of catastrophic loss in their premium calculation because this is historic. I've been watching this fire get worse and worse. We went from one catastrophic loss to another. Last week we saw this terrible tragedy in New Orleans, and where somebody mows down everybody. See, now we see an even worse catastrophic loss. I suspect that it's not an act of God that caused this. I think that somebody, Milton, Vanita, ultimately should be held responsible for this.
And Nathaniel, you need evidence. And of course, that our new government, our new president will probably come to the rescue of California, right?
Now, there are several fires, and they all have different names. And I wasn't aware of these fires being named. Attorney Grimes, do you have any perspective on how these fires are being named? I've heard the Eden Fire and different fires. And to your point, Attorney Lee, I heard yesterday that someone had been apprehended in connection with one of these fires. One is in, what is it, the Pacific Palisades, another in um, Pasadena. They all have different names. And I did hear that someone had been apprehended with respect to at least one of these fires. But a lot of blame is being passed around currently by the incoming administration, which is absolutely unacceptable at this time. There's been talk about whether or not the fire hydrants had sufficient, water, whether there was low pressure, whether there were staffing cuts in the various fire departments. So a lot of accusations are being made. The governor of California has commenced an investigation, independent investigation. But at this point, the focus should be on the families that are homeless. Everything that they owned has been burned to the ground. And that should be foremost in our focus at this point. The Biden administration has pledged 100% of the cost of recovery up to 6 months, I've read. And so, again, this is an example of how the federal government can work to help citizens during in the aftermath of a catastrophe like this.
Yeah,
But we got
Vanita,
a number of
I'm
questions
aware.
that, chat about Milton.
Yeah.
Renee want to know, is there a question about the defunding of funds by the mayor of some area? She wants you to talk about that. Did the mayor defund certain areas?
Now you get into another subject. Did the mayor of Los Angeles defund some areas related to the fire, or just defunded some areas in general? What are we talking about?
Well, I think they're speaking about the fire protection issue.
I don't know, guys. I'm just aware of the devastation of these fires. I understand that there was a person I can't answer that question directly, but I understand that the person that was apprehended, the suspect that Vanita was speaking of, that they backed off of that person somewhat and they arrested him more so for violation of a probation that he was on, as opposed to some strong evidentiary suspicion of him causing the fire. I may be wrong about that, but that was my latest information last night on that person. I don't know that they have a real viable suspect, Vanita. I really don't. And in this kind of a case, so much evidence is going to be destroyed or has been destroyed unless you got an eyewitness to something. It's going to be hard to prove someone guilty of this devastation, y'all, I think. I understand that the fire in Altadena, which is a location where Rodney King used to live, so I'm a little bit familiar with that city. I've been there several times. It's only about 25 minutes from here in good traffic. It's only 50% contained today. I mean, 15% contained. That means 85% of it is they're not in control of it. So the smoke was tremendous coming through here Thursday and Friday. I mean, you had ashes dropping like it was snow on my place. So, like you said at the beginning, this is first time, and I guess it's a first time for everything. This thing is out of proportion to anything I've seen, and just hope it calms down.
Well, what's interesting, Milton, they gave names to all these fires. Two largest fires, LA, Eaton, and the Palisade fires. Then they called the Cal Fire, Eden Fire, Pasadena Fire, the Kenneth Fire, the Hearst Fire, the Lydia Fire. I mean, they're giving you a fire's name like hurricanes.
Exactly. I'd not seen that before.
Yeah, and I can't keep up with them. This friend of mine, attorney friend of mine that I've tried about 8 cases with over in Malibu area. Malibu is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area. And they've gotten burned out a couple of years, but this has been more devastating than the prior years. Yeah, the names come. I can't keep up with the names as much as we're trying to figure out how to get together and collect a goodwill, a contribution of clothes, canned goods, necessities for day-to-day living to take them at this distribution center. But it's a terrible situation.
Well, the thing I'm concerned about, because our callers want to know, is this worse than the Florida flood? Well, this is a significant environmental issue. When you have this type of fire, you have all these toxins released into the atmosphere.
Right.
And I think that this will affect citizens for generations to come. You know, because, I mean, every time something burned up, you have chemicals that are released in the air. And I'm not sure where this is going to head, but I suspect that you're going to have a lot of ill people over the next years as a result. Remember what happened when the World Trade Center about all those brave men and women who went in there to save lives. And
Right.
then it turns out that they got environmental issues from going inside of a burning building. Here, we could have all sorts of toxins released into the atmosphere. And like you're saying, you're having debris falling on your roof. And how far is your home away from the fire?
Well, from the Pacific Palisades, shoot, you can jump on the 405 from my place and be there in 15 to 20 minutes. Going over to Altadena, that's next door to Pasadena, you could be there in a half hour easily. You know, if you're going at midnight and there's no traffic, you probably could be there in 20 minutes, Nate. So it's definitely within, like I can sit here in this room, I call my sunroom, and man, I could see that smoke. It had a long trail of smoke in the sky, you know, for miles. It felt like it was next door almost, like you could put your hand on it. It's close enough.
What's the air quality like out there? You know, do
Uh,
you
the
need to wear a
air-
mask yet?
we were wearing masks yesterday. I did not want to wear a mask this morning on the program, but I'm 80 years old. I feel, I got so many days left. I can go without a mask today if I want, but it is a concern about the quality of the air.
What a
I'm
tragedy.
79 years old. I shouldn't claim 80 yet. I'm 79. I'll be 80 in July.
What a tragedy.
Yeah.
I
Between
don't, I'm sorry.
2020 and 2022, insurance companies declined to renew an estimated 2.8 million policies in California.
Woo.
And that includes over 500,000 homeowners in Los Angeles County, where, the fires are currently raging. And so some of those policies were not renewed, and most of them have been canceled by insurers. And there is a plan that I mentioned earlier called the California Fair Plan, but of course, those policies have higher premiums and less coverage. So it's really a crisis of insurance in
Right.
California. And again, this FAIR plan may go bankrupt. It's considered to be a last resort insurance provider. And this is a similar plan, Renee, you're referencing Florida, to what they have in Florida, where many insurance carriers pulled out of Florida many years ago as well. And they created a similar type of insurance plan. From what I'm seeing, um, I'm just looking at this FAIR plan, which is really they're a catastrophe insurer, and again, the premiums for coverage under this plan, is pretty high.
Hey, Attorney Bank, that Florida plan is worthless. I have firsthand knowledge and experience with the Florida plan. Their insurance plan is a joke. First of all, they don't issue right away. So you apply for it. When I own a home, my parents died, and the home, I kept the insurance up, but you could not get that Florida insurance policy. It would take 18 months. And then it was coverage below the value of your home. And the third thing, the price was so astronomically high until it
Right.
almost wasn't worth the effort. It was just
Exactly.
a tragedy.
When you say high,
It just showed a lack of leadership in that issue by the Florida government, because they have the worst insurance program on the planet. I mean, it's terrible. United States should not have a plan that poor, but the Florida
so
insurance.
there you go. So there you go. So what do the people do when they lose their home in a situation like that? How do they revive? How do they recap? So that's the average person investment, future investment. Yeah.
Well,
So
what happened is that the tragedy of that is that they still have mortgages on the house. So even though the house is destroyed, they still owe the debt. So they'll still be paying for a house that they don't have. The second part about that, the mortgage company, when you have a mortgage, they require single interest coverage. So the mortgage company, when a person buys a home, they get homeowners insurance and they have a lien, the mortgage become an additional insured. Well, because the mortgage is additional insured, the insurance company in general must notify the mortgage company that the coverage is being voided or terminated. Then the mortgage company then has the right to get single interest coverage. So as a practical matter, in most of the cases I've litigated, the mortgage company successfully got coverage to cover their losses, but not to protect the homeowner. So the mortgage company will get enough money to cover their debt, say it's 200,000, and so their insurance will pay off the debt, but the homeowners, everything they gathered in their whole life, the sum total of their life acceptance is destroyed. And so that's something that most people may be not aware of it. So they protect themselves. As a general rule, that's not 100% accurate because sometimes things slip through the cracks because the insurance company notification may not have reached the right mortgage lender. And so you get some cases where there's no coverage at all.
When we talk about rebuilding, when you've had the, um, you were talking about air quality, for example, Nathaniel, and even those homes that were not impacted by the fire, there has to be some residual damage just by being in proximity to homes that were decimated and burned to the ground. So even if your home was not impacted, based on what I'm seeing on television, how could you return and try to live in that home based on the conditions around you?
Mm, that's an excellent point because stores, uh, food items, gas station, the entire infrastructure. I looked at
utility,
TV, Milton, everything seemed like it was just devastated. Everything just
Everything
got,
is lost. So you
yeah.
don't have a community, you don't have, infrastructure to your point. So I was thinking, okay, so how do you operate in that situation, even though your home is still standing? And I'm thinking, perhaps, well, not perhaps, you can get your belongings out of that home, but the ability to live in that home is probably challenging, equally as challenging.
yeah. I would not want to live in a home where every home in the block got burned down because you're going to have the toxic aroma in your home, the environmental issues going to be so severe. And then the other thing, we have some really good educated callers I was looking at. They hit some good point. You don't have any rain. Is there no rain in the forecast there anytime soon, Milton?
I'm not laughing at that question. The was, I haven't seen rain. I haven't seen rain. It was a little drizzle, I think, sometime in December, but I haven't seen rain for months now. This is California. We don't have a lot of rain.
Experiencing tremendous drought, an increased drought, and then you have those high winds. I've been traveling to California for many, many years because I have family there, and I've just never been aware of these high winds. What about you, Milton?
My daughter lives in Porter Ranch. Wednesday night, I think she told me, she slept in her daughter's bedroom because the wind was so strong on her side of the house, on the master bedroom side, she couldn't sleep. The wind was so loud. So the winds can be really great out here. They can displace one in their home. Um, I've been South LA area and we don't have that problem, but the surrounding hillsides and the areas where some of these expensive homes are. They're located on the hillside, or they build them where they have views. They're suffering a tremendous setback.
I had read that some residents, affluent residents, of course, were able to procure. I understand that there is a market for private firefighters in California, Milton, and that they could be retired firefighters or they could be uh, firefighters that are procured in connection with insurance, whereby it's just part of the protective um, uh, systems that support home sprinkler systems and the like. Again, for more wealthy homeowners, some of them had and were able to call their own private firefighters to help with the fire.
I am absolutely unaware of any of that. My daughter was telling me last night that she saw on the internet that they had bought in some firefighters from South Africa here. I know they use inmates from prison here to fight forest fires, because I've a couple of times attempted to get an inmate into the program in prison, but they run that themselves. Um, but that's the only thing I've heard of any outside, or I know of any outside firefighters. Private firefighters, I have not heard of at all, Vanita.
And I understand that firefighters from across the country have been supporting
Okay.
these fires as well, and firefighters from Canada
Mhm.
as well. And so we've just never seen anything like this.
No, no. That wind can
And
put,
again, it to me, as our caller has stated, I mean, this is an impact of climate change.
well, we got a new administration that believe 100% in climate change, so I'm sure they will address this problem, won't
They think it's a hoax.
they?
But here's the thing that I'm concerned about. Uh, One, the devastation is not under control yet. So
Right,
this is a moving target. It only will get worse. Every day I've been waking up, I've been following this. It just seemed like it getting worse. I don't see an improvement. The second thing is I was concerned because they say they don't have enough water
right.
to fight the fire.
Or if the water is there, they can't get the pressure to get it to the fire. So there
They
we
got
are,
the ocean right outside of the state. I mean,
right alongside this situation. Yeah. Matter of fact, a lot of these view homes, especially in the Pacific Palisades, I've been there a couple of times, that bluff overlooking Venice and the boardwalk there, you can see nothing but ocean.
I was thinking to myself, somebody need to come up with a process to take the ocean water, put it in tanks, and use that.
You're welcome. Undoubtedly, they haven't resolved that problem.
Okay, we have some other news, not as important as this, of course. Uh, there's a lot of things. Topic starting out with Attorney Banks, the president-elect sentence was handed down yesterday. What do you know about that?
Can you go back to one of the programs some months ago where I think I speculated that he wasn't going to do any time?
That was prophetic, Attorney Grimes.
I think we have a program where that's what we talked about.
At least one program, Attorney Grimes. I think there
Yeah,
have been several occasions in which you made that prophetic point.
yeah.
But yesterday, after a failed attempt at advocating to the Supreme Court to at least delay his sentencing,
Mhm.
which the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision failed to block his sentencing. And the three liberal judges were joined by Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts in failing to block the sentencing. And so Judge Marchand, is that the way to pronounce his name? Marchand, um, uh, in his opinion, that was published. I heard the audio on television yesterday that he, to your point, Attorney Grimes, he was sentenced to a quote, unconditional discharge. Have you ever heard of that?
It's first of I heard that phrase. Yeah,
Now, I've heard of a sentence and then having it suspended.
or stayed or something, yes. Mhm.
Exactly, but a unconditional discharge is a new term on me, and I was wondering whether, as trial lawyers, you're familiar with that term.
No,
But again, um, he still is and will go down in history as being a 34 count felon, a 34 count felon,
who's
but with no time served.
Well, I thought what was telling about this case is that the U.S. Supreme Court, as long as I've known about the court, I've never seen them interfere with a local court's decision. There is a process of how you get a case from a trial court to the U.S. Supreme Court. The process has always been you have exhaustive remedy in the state courts, so you go to the state highest court. Then, the case then is transferred from the state higher courts, and rare cases go to the Supreme Court, or it goes into the federal court system. Somehow, this case fast track and goes from a trial court to the U.S. Supreme Court all within a matter of a week. I just thought that was shocking. The fact that they even voted on this was shocking to me. I mean, it almost appears that the court has become too political. It interfered with the election process. You see some decisions that I think, are inconsistent with some of the cases I've grown up on as a law student and stuff. Things that I was told and cases I read, it was a radical departure. The fact that it was 5-4, and the other thing I thought was unusual is that the president-elect had a conversation with Justice Alito about a law clerk coming into his administration. At the same time, they filed a petition to have the case heard by the Supreme Court. That was so bizarre to me. I've never heard of anything like that in American history. It's just rare.
It didn't happen, and you just hadn't heard of it, then. So
I don't know. I just, the federal court judges that I know, they want to accept a soda pop from you,
right,
nothing of value,
right.
And so they have these very high ethical standards, and because of that, it would have precluded any of this from occurring, and that's why it was troublesome to me when I read about that incident. And fact is, then the case comes before the Supreme Court a couple of days later, and he vote to allow transfer of this case to the U.S. Supreme Court from a trial judge to prevent a sentencing of a convicted felon. I've never even seen anybody file a motion like that in any court. I would think that the typical lawyer would have probably got sanctioned for even filing that. Now you got a precedent that they've made that now the court has reviewed that, I wonder how it's going to affect cases in the future. Will everybody get the same type privilege?
I doubt it.
Well, it's fascinating. The second issue, I watch Attorney Banks. I watched part of oral arguments. I woke up this morning and I watched some additional argument on the TikTok Supreme Court decision. And that is a fascinating case, folks. The TikTok case is something that I wish everybody would have heard the oral arguments. And it was something that I didn't realize. TikTok has the ability, if you have that downloaded onto your cell phone, it tracks everywhere you go. So TikTok has the ability to spy on you as a citizen. And so the government was saying that they have too much control. And if they could spy on you, I guess they could activate the sound to hear what you're talking about. So the fact that you download TikTok on your cell phone, and it could, I was thinking about this TikTok thing has so many repercussions that people don't think about, Milton. Just think about this. TikTok technology, say a person, had committed a crime. He say, I was not in LA on January the 11th. TikTok, pull TikTok record. Not only they say you were in California, LA on January 11th, but we could tell you exactly where you were. So, so they were saying that it gave the Chinese government too much spying power over American citizens. And the fact they were arguing for the Supreme Court, I said, this is shocking. We let a foreign country spy on American citizens. It made me quickly delete TikTok from my social media account, which I don't use anyway. I said, I don't need this. I mean, I think this is a bad idea to have a corporation that can monitor everything that you do. And that was my concern.
That is owned by the Chinese government. And so, as you know, the government is advocating that this is a homeland security issue. And the proponents are advocating that it's a First Amendment freedom issue. And you also have to take into consideration that there are 170 million TikTok users. And as I'm sure many of our callers know, this is a video platform that enables users to upload their content. But the company called ByteDance, ByteDance, is owned by the Chinese government. And there was a law passed here in the United States that will ban TikTok as of January 19th if it is not sold to a U.S. entity or non-Chinese entity. And so again, the incoming Trump administration filed an amicus brief, Attorney Lee, asking the court to postpone any determination until after the president-elect's inauguration so that he could, quote, negotiate a resolution of this issue. Let me also make the point that the private data of U.S. citizens from TikTok is stored in the United States. And that is one of the arguments that's being used to assert that TikTok should not be banned.
Well, I'm not surprised by any of this. I remember reading a book, must have been 10 or 15 years ago, entitled, I think it was The Hunting of Pablo Escobar, when they were trying to hunt him down in Mexico, and how the U.S. had a system built in. They would fly over the mountain and they could turn on his telephone If the battery was in the phone, they could turn it on and they could locate where he was and listen to his conversations. And that was throughout this book that they were talking about that. So that was some years ago. They had that technology similar to what you're talking about. Similar to, not the same as what you're talking about with TikTok, where they can locate everywhere you go. So that technology has been in existence for some time, and the government had access to it. Now China honing it in to all citizens that have signed up for TikTok is a little bit further along than that. Also, just to throw in here, there was a series on television called Homeland. And I remember in that series that this guy came back from being captured by the terrorist group in some part of the Middle East. And he was a war hero. He came back after being in captivity for 5 or 6, 7 years. And he had tutored one of the king's sons over there. And he came back and they suspected him as being a double agent. And it turns out he was. And he was to blow up the White House. And I think he blew up a conference. I don't know if any of you ever saw this series or not, called Homeland. But this the situation that happened in New Orleans, and where was the other situation from the military guy that came back? And wasn't he in the service? Wasn't the other guy in the service who came back here and killed a bunch of people in New Orleans and some other place, Vanita?
I don't know. I didn't track the story.
That gentleman, I believe he was in the Army, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah, these are former military guys. So I
Yes,
don't,
both in Vegas and
in New Orleans, right? Am I the only one that maybe I dreamt this, but that's what I remember seeing.
But what's significant about the TikTok ban? Initially, the president-elect Trump was against it. He met with YESS, according to the news account in Barron, and Yass and his wife is the second largest contributor to Trump and the Republican, donated $80 million. And after he met with Mr. Yass, the president-elect changed his mind about TikTok. The ban is not a bad thing anymore. So this is going to be fascinating, but I'm thinking that as a citizen, if you have TikTok, maybe it's a good idea to block it from monitoring what you're doing. You have a cell phone that now is a spy on you, and this technology is a scary thing.
Yeah.
I watched this lawyer down in South Carolina get convicted, and what was the critical evidence against him was his Apple iPhone that tracked his location. I guess the cell phone has location, and they used that data to show that he was at the crime scene at the time his wife and son was murdered.
I've been dealing with that in murder cases all along here in LA, where the tower was to say what time you were there and the approximate area you were in within a block or so of the scene of a shooting. They've been using that for years here in LA. Your phone, your cell phone, unless you have it turned off. If someone calls you or you call someone or you receive a text message, it can ping and it puts you at the corner of my block or a block away or a street away. They've been doing that. And the police usually recover your phone, take your phone, and they put that, they track that and see where you were. Where were you at 11 o'clock this morning? Oh, I was in Santa Ana. Well, someone else had your phone, I guess, because we got you here. So, yes, sir. That's our life now.
A technology expert, Attorney Banks, man, I'm concerned though, Attorney Banks, about TikTok being able to monitor everything you're doing. I mean, that's a scary thought to me as a trial lawyer. I deleted that TikTok from my cell phone. I don't know how I got it. Maybe it got downloaded accidentally, but I deleted it once I saw that.
Absolutely. But as Attorney Grimes has stated, unless you have your location service turned off, which I do, and they still probably can track you if they want to, Milton.
Yeah, if
Uh,
you got the battery in the phone, they can turn it on and off, y'all. That's
exactly.
going on for years.
So unfortunately, there's no more privacy.
Oh,
And this is a generational issue as well. When you talk to young professionals, they will tell you they don't care about that. They prefer convenience over privacy.
mm.
Um, and so it's a generational issue as well. Sometimes when I have the conversation, they say, well, they've got your information anyway. And if they want to track you, they can anyway. So I prefer the convenience of doing my banking online, for example, right? Or
Mhm.
making my purchases online or paying my bills online. They don't value many younger generational, um, many of our younger generation don't value individual privacy as much as older generations.
Hey, what do you recommend that we do, counselor, about this technology problem? In other words, you know, they monitor your whereabouts. I mean, most people have an expectation of privacy, I would think, not realizing that when you log on to this database like TikTok, uh, you just you have a spy that you carry around in your purse or your wallet or on your coat jacket. They're spying on you.
Well, it's a convenience that people are getting used to, Nate, to keep from traveling for a half hour or an hour. It just boom, 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 go on your laptop and do what you got to do when you would have had to drive for a half hour or an hour. So it definitely is a time-saving convenience for everybody that we enjoy. And so I guess the price of that convenience comes along with this loss of privacy. You can't have it both ways. So what you do? You like that convenience. I've been around you. I know.
And there's the balance between national security
We all do.
and privacy. And privacy is getting the short end of that stick.
I'm concerned about this. So, do you think that most Americans be better off if they delete TikTok and these social media sites that tracking where your whereabouts?
Good luck with 170 million users.
Ooh, that's half of the population.
I don't know. I just think that most users don't realize that they're carrying a spy with them. They just don't realize that. Now in litigation, uh, the defense lawyers on my cases, they're all subpoenaing cell phone data. You
Right,
know, they're trying to see your whereabouts. If you're claiming you're disabled, they pull cell phone data to show that you were at the casino. You're here, you're there.
right,
So you get in a deposition, they're asking, what were you doing? Or like, for example, uh, this data thing is out of control. Milton, Vanita, we have somebody in a store that slip and fell. The stores produce record that shows over 9 month time period, this person had bought like 80 bottles of wine. So the insinuation, of course, is that the customer is a drunk
right.
and that they fell and hurt themselves in the store because they're likely to be partially intoxicated. I said, well, that ain't gonna work because your store is the one selling the intoxicating products, so we're gonna sue your ass for that too.
And
If that's the case,
it's not only TikTok, it's all of your mobile and computer devices that have these privacy, concerns. When it comes down to TikTok, users, of course, they can control who sees their content. They can set their account to private. That's not going to address the Chinese government obtaining their personal data. But all the computer devices collect a location, browsing history, and many times even the content of the messages, even when users aren't actively sharing that information. Um,
We know they're using that information for some gain on their part. So no, I don't want them having that information.
and
Yes,
people
I
don't read
agree with you.
privacy policies. People don't read privacy policies because they're long and convoluted, right?
Right?
But most of those privacy policies, the users are stating that the companies can use their personal data. There's a requirement of how that data will be used. But in many of those privacy policies, if, for example, I'm seeing a lot of organizations begin to use the chat GBT, the AI chat GBT,
Mhm.
which states in many cases the policy that those companies will use your personal data to train the AI, right? And so most people just don't read those policies.
Most
Sure.
people, including most lawyers, don't read those policies.
Exactly. So you really just have to limit the information that you share, and just be careful about what personal data that you're including in your profile and your videos.
This is such an important topic until we're not going to be on the show next week because it's Martin Luther King holiday weekend. But I think I need to get an expert and maybe we have a series where we talk about this because I think it's such a relevant issue that your expectation of privacy, I think, is important. And I think most folks are unaware of how serious this matter is. I think that most people think that uh, when they carry a cell phone, that it's confidential, not realizing that your cell phone is just a spy.
Do people really think that? I don't think people think that their data is confidential. And there are things that you can do to protect your privacy, including, the privacy of your communications, including um, installing privacy, software and the like. But there's a lot we can talk about in terms of privacy with respect to um, computer devices and telephones. Nathaniel, you're absolutely right about that.
Well, let's take it up in 2 weeks because next week is Martin Luther King. And it's an important time in American history. Great civil rights leader, made a state and federal holiday. So I'll be out there enjoying the weekend, enjoying some semblance of civil rights movement progress. Now we're seeing an abolition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and affirmative action. So at least that gives us hope. That's my closing comment on that issue.
Yeah, well, I think that train has left the station, Brother Lee, that about this privacy and the communication system we are now engulfed in or engrossed in throughout our life. Yeah, I think that train is out, left the station, my brother.
And
Okay, good luck.
Attorney Banks, what's funny, one of our callers, they briefly reminded me MLK Day is also Inauguration Day. I didn't forget about that. I would think it was like Mass Funeral Day, from my standpoint. The death of Civil Rights Day, I don't know. I'm not too thrilled about Inauguration Day this year for obvious reason. But
Well,
in any
we
event,
we do
go
know
ahead, Counselor.
that there are elections coming up, municipal elections, township elections. Here in Illinois, there are elections that are approaching April 1st. And so I like to say that elections are the end of the beginning. And so now we have to continue to hold people accountable. And we have to look to these upcoming local elections and ensure that we are electing people that have values that are consistent with our own.
Well, thank you
Right.
very much. Thank you, callers, for sending the notes to us. We'll be talking to you in 2 weeks. And until then, stay safe and do something productive on Martin Luther King Day. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed day. Have a great